Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Mindshifters Radio with your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife, Jeanie. Michael and Jeanie share with you the wisdom of the ancient Aramaic internal process of forgiveness. They offer tools and support 5 days a week from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. They will support you in building a solid foundation within yourself to live in pure love. In Aramaic, Rakhma. Michael is the author of Why Is This Happening to Me Again? For more information on Michael and Jeanie, please visit www.whyagain.com. And now your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael and Jeanie Ryce.
And the truth that is rooted within me.
Hi, and welcome to Monday, September 19th. This is Memorial Day 113. Michael will talk to that here in just a moment. Welcome to Mindshifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and our call-in number is 646-200-4169. And we have a lot of people on the switchboard today. Chat room's not got anybody yet, but if you have a question, call in, press 1, let us know you want to talk, and we'll turn you on. Hi, Michael.
Hi, sweetie. Let's see, what day is today on our
113.
113. One day 113 of honoring Memorial Day, and our request in honor of Memorial Day is that you consider looking at just one area in your life where you have some form of hostility or fear happening in your world, and that you'd be willing to apply forgiveness to that hostility or fear. Our goal in doing so is to remove hostility and fear from planet Earth, to create a vacuum that will just remove it from the earth through people who are willing to do the work of healing, of forgiveness. Forgiveness not meaning letting somebody else off the hook because it's there, but going through the act of removing what never belonged in your physiology, your human system. And if you're not familiar with that conversation, you can jump on our website, www.whyagain.com. On the right-hand side, you'll see a link that says Download Worksheets. And the first 4 links will give you the whole story, including walk you right through step-by-step. There are 2 examples, MP3 radio shows of walking through the worksheet process, the forgiveness process. So that's our first request. And our second request is that you hold a space for David. David is usually on the show every day. I don't know whether he might be there or not. Jeanie, is David there? I doubt
He
it.
is. Yes, David and Jim both are on.
Oh, cool. Well, fabulous. David, I was just going to make a request, but would you like me to make that request, or would you like to share what's happening for you? You with us, David? Well, I'll go ahead and just put out a request to everyone who's connected with David through the show or through Heartland. David got a phone call yesterday morning that his son had died. 37 years old.
37.
And again?
Michael?
Yes, David, welcome.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, I just thought I would tune in here. I'm sitting with one of my lovely sisters, Teresa, and we've been talking about the forgiveness work and the family dynamics of all of it. And just wanted to let you all know I wanted to listen in, and thank you all for your support. It's been great. It's a huge challenge, and it's great to be able to have the support of my sister here, as well as other family members and everybody there at Heartland that's supporting me, and as I process through this event that's going on. So thank you all very much, and for everyone that's listening.
We are absolutely here to support you, David, in healing anything and everything that comes up, and holding the space there for the whole family in an extremely difficult time. Vital young man who just totally out of the blue and surprisingly just left behind a son that's 12 and a wife and family.
Yeah. So I'll keep you guys informed. I'm going to go ahead and leave the radio on and listen as you guys talk about some things. I'm going to finish my conversation here with my sister as I'm listening as well.
Awesome. Well, we hold space of love and for you and the whole family, David. Bless you.
Blessings,
Thank you.
Blessings, David. Please let us know how we can support you.
Thank you, Tim. Much appreciated. Much appreciated. So I'll listen in, guys. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Tim, how are you today?
I'm doing quite well, thank you. Had a lovely weekend and very full week of seeing people and doing worksheets and tapping and breathing, and we're experiencing the rainy weekend in Chicago area this weekend. So I'm just kind of breathing here, shocked to hear the news. When did David lose his son?
He got the phone call yesterday morning, and it happened sometime during the night last night, or the night before last.
And where does his son live?
In Louisville. So David's now in Louisville. He left here about 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon and drove in this morning. So he's back there with the whole family. I'm trying to remember, I believe 13 brothers and sisters. And so the whole family is gathering to do some healing.
Well, we certainly support them with sending love and prayer, and please keep us posted if there's anything you think we can do to support him in any other way.
We'll do it. And is
Michael,
Terry by any chance? Go ahead.
No, he's not on, but we do have a caller.
Awesome. Where's the call coming from?
It's 541, so it's Oregon.
It's Julie Burns.
Oh, hi.
Well, hello, young lady.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
How are you?
Now that I'm talking with you, I'm trying to remember how I what's been disturbing to me is and I've worked on it, and but in a sense, people taking advantage. What was this thing here? Where all right. There are several things, but in one case, someone just a workshop I was going to was calling me, hallucinations. I said, what in the world are you talking about? And it's affecting so many places in my life where doctors are listening to that, or they're getting this word or something like that. And it's because I went to see this fellow, and he said that I wasn't having someone breaking into my house. Well, the guy's now in jail with 5 counts of rape against him and will never get out again. It was definitely happening, and this guy says, well, I just had hallucinations. But the point is the fact that he said that is affecting many, many other people, including doctors and dentists. And then the dentist takes advantage because they said, well, you're not telling the truth anyway. I mean, you can't. You're not seeing things clearly, so if anything's wrong, like poisoning by prosthesis, it's not really true, so we don't have to pay any attention to it.
Hello, Julia.
Yes?
Julia, we're losing you. Slow down a little bit. How can we support you? What's happening in your life that we can support you with? I hear there are lots of crazy things going on in the world, but we want to move into...
No, these were all things that were happening toward me.
Okay.
So
how can we support you?
Well, I've been doing worksheets and just supporting and seeing that the truth is there and that the truth is being realized and that it's all working well.
and we're here to hold that space for you. Absolutely.
Okay.
Is there any question on the worksheets that we can assist you with? Is there anything that would be useful in that direction?
Well, I'm not quite sure. I've got a stack of them here. I'm looking at the last one, something to do with manipulation.
So is it a repeat? Is it a repeat pattern then that people accuse you of not telling the truth, or that you're hallucinating, and so
no, I haven't. No, I've spent my life traveling around the world doing healing. I have people who are from this area too, who've written these wonderful kudos and the things that I do. That it's wonderful. I traveled all over the world.
So it's just recently that this has happened?
Oh yes, that this. You mean this incident that I'm talking about? What recently happened? I mean, I have lived in Paris and London and traveled the world. I spent almost all the time doing healing with moving aura photographs. That's in Mexico and Peru and many countries in the world, and including here in Ashland and including in many other places in the United States. And
Julia,
yes.
Do you have a question for us? Do you have a question for us? We want to get to
the question is, how do I stop this statement that this person made about hallucinations, which then people accept, and then they don't believe me, and so it's affecting my life.
Okay, so there are two perspectives to take. You can look at the inner and the outer. What's going on inside of you? What are you feeling in you around this issue or this situation? That's where your forgiveness work is.
I think that's where the anger comes in, yes. And that's where forgiveness would have to come in.
Okay. So then the anger is usually a drug that we use internally. It's internally produced in order to keep from feeling something that's painful. So the worksheet would probably start out, you'd probably start out with the worksheet, maybe whoever this person is with their name as number 1A would be the object of attention. And then the situation, they accuse me of things that aren't true. My feeling, anger. And what's the thought?
Yeah, I think I have that down here. I'm looking. Yes. Yeah, it is. That's pretty much what I've done on this, yeah.
Okay. So is there a specific question we can help you with, or did you just kind of want to share what was going on?
Well, if there was any other way, I guess there's nothing to do from your point of view except to draw out the feelings and change it in my own mind. So hopefully either I am not affected by it or they will change their mind or something of that sort. I'm not sure.
The first order of business is if I'm angry, there's something that this event is stirring up in me that's painful. So I'm going to work through the anger and then go to, allow myself to experience what is painful in me about it. And then, having reestablished myself in my true human life, the active presence of love, I'm going to come forward as love to communicate with this person in a way that's going to bring about change. And that communication might be, via letter, personally, responsibility communication. I think when we were out there, not sure whether you did the communication. Did you hear what I think I said workshop? But there is a worksheet. Okay, so you've got the worksheet for that. So you might want to
I got it right here.
So you might want to take that 7-step responsibility communication and write a letter out to this person using those steps, the responsibility communication, and send it to them and see what kind of response you get. That might be your next step.
I was going to be doing a fax or a way of getting a communication to them, and I am composing that. That is, but it's like letting them know that with that, which isn't true, that the effects that can happen to me and the disadvantage. I don't know how to say it. the other things that happen as a consequence. Like, for instance, a dentist does something wrong, and then they said, well, it's not that you don't know the difference, so we don't have to correct that. And in many areas of life where they're taking, somehow they've heard this, and then instead of treating you as the person that you are, they're treating you by someone else's hallucinations or idea of who you are. Does this make sense?
So it sounds like there are several worksheets to do around the way people treat you, and it's not just this person who's speaking that way about you, but it sounds like it's extending into other areas. And I would say the first order business, yes, you would say, don't bother trying to take the speck out of somebody else's eye while you have a beam in your own. If I have pain, if I have anger, if I have fear, I want to work that through first, and then step out into responsibility communication. So that would be my support for you, my suggestion.
Well, wait a minute, hold on. I see. Rather than attacking or challenging them in the attack and letting them know in which ways that's hurting me, in other words, get over all those feelings that I have and then communicate with them in a different way. Is that what you're saying?
That's it exactly. Precisely. Yes, ma'am. That's
in other
exactly.
words,
that you're going to come from a different space of creatorship when you're in a connected, loving space than when you're in a space of pain or anger.
Yes.
You're going to be able to communicate and very likely create different results with them. Create open
right. Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Oh, it does. Yes, it does. I just have to work it through and flesh it out.
Well, that's the process of healing, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're well familiar with that, so we hold the space and keep us posted on how it goes.
Okay, I'll do that. God bless you, and thank you for your work.
Thanks, Julia.
Okay, bye.
Delighted. Thank you, Julia.
Okay, bye.
Jeanie, do we have any other callers or anything happening in the chat room?
No, it's real quiet.
Oh, okay. And once again, I'm going to ask the question if Carrie happens to be on the phone. Carrie had called in last week with a couple of questions, and then she wrote a letter, a pretty powerful letter to the people in her support group, really looking into her own process and how intense it had become. And so I'm wondering if you might be there, Carrie. Do you have anything to share with us? I guess she's not. Tim.
Yes, sir.
Do you have anything to share with us today? Anything exciting in your world?
Well, I think one of the best things to say is that the call we just had and the discussion about being stuck in anger, and it's that process distorting our perception and our communication is really, really powerful. And I've had somebody in just this morning, and we were talking about something very similar, where if I get triggered to any intense emotional response that's negative, the first and most important thing for me to do is to realize that's coming from me. I didn't just get attacked to produce this experience. That experience, that anger, that sadness, that fear, that confusion was already in me. And it is now, because it's up in that moment when it comes up, it's distorting my perception dramatically. And if I don't do something about diffusing and dismantling the source of that intense emotion, I won't ever be free of it. The first thing I can do is I can distort, or I can dispel or dismantle the intense emotion, and I'll be able to perceive things more clearly. But then I need to do the next step and go figure out, where is that coming from? How did that get triggered? And what was it that got triggered inside of me? And until I do that, I'm not likely to get any productive long-term response. So I was talking to somebody about your quote about humility from the ancient Aramaic being my ability to see the highest and best in another person, and then choosing to cooperate only with that, and how that process can be very powerful. And it might be something that helps me smooth out an interaction with someone. But if I've gotten triggered to anger or fear or sadness, I really need to go in and do some worksheets around what was that in me that got triggered. It's not enough to just gloss over it and convince myself that I can now see that person in a loving manner. The fact that I had anger or fear or sadness triggered in me means it was there already, and I have this destructive energy loaded in me, locked down in me, that's going to be there to come up again and again and again in similar circumstances. So both things are important to clear the negative emotions so I can perceive accurately, and the next step is equally as important if I'm going to break out of the pattern, and that is to use the worksheets in a kind of an excavating process to dig up and dismantle whatever the source of that pain is within me. So that would be my offering. That was a very good call, and the idea that it isn't always easy. As a matter of fact, it's probably the hardest part for those of us who have been conditioned to look to the outside for the causes of our fear and pain and sadness. The hardest part is getting myself to look inside every time I feel fear and pain and sadness.
Yeah, and then to be willing to see what drives that pain and fear and sadness is such a big key. I love the line in the Course in Miracles that says, you must recognize the distorting power of the way you want it to be. And when we're in a goal that we think is so important to us at any given moment, it's that very goal that links to our hostility and fear and keeps it going, keeps it moving. And there's where Yeshua talked about clean out the beam in your own eye before you do the speck in your brother's. So, and when we're in hostility and fear, as you speak about the distorted perception, literally we're stuck in an hallucination when hostility or fear is active. What we're seeing is an inside picture, and we're making images up of things that we think are outside of us, but it really isn't outside of us. It's right there in us. And the willingness to let go of the goal that drives it seems to be, the core of the Aramaic forgiveness process. The word forgive is shabag, and it literally translates to cancel. And it seems to be such a challenge and so counterintuitive. But when we're living in a 9-bit mind, and the actual world is who knows, what the size of it is out there, we tend to think our story is the way it is out there, and the truth is our story is always the way it is in here. And are we willing to be responsible for it and change it? And forgiveness is the core and the key tool for being able to change it. One of the things, we're in an intuitive development intensive, and one of the principles we're going to get into today is looking at, the fact that we live in a world that is so huge. You could use a comparison. Imagine it's a 5 billion piece jigsaw puzzle, and in that 5 billion piece jigsaw puzzle, we've put together 5,000 pieces of the puzzle, and that's our story. That's our whole family history. That's our story. And so we're looking at 5,000 pieces of a 5 billion piece jigsaw puzzle, and we think we know what the picture is. And hostility or fear informs us that we don't know, and that we have work to do in order to be able to get to the next level of our lives, the next level of creativity, the next level of aliveness, and the next level of recognizing that the things that come to us are coming to us to knock on our door and give us an opportunity.
Well,
so we're here to go ahead, Ken.
That's a real challenge. One of the other big challenges when we first get involved in this is to see the upset not as an attack and not as a problem, but literally as the opportunity to heal. the opportunity to perceive differently and move forward in life from a completely different perspective than we ever had before. You know, one of the things that you said in one of the earlier lectures that really changed my life was, you said if you ask people who are adults to think about the worst of the worst things that have happened in their life, and then ask them to pick one that was 5 years or more in the past, every time you do that, people can see how that horrible thing that happened in their past is directly responsible for the best things they have in their life today.
Yep.
With the possible exception of losing a child. Every other event, well, when I heard that in your lecture, this image kind of exploded in my head, and the best, there was a whole concept that came with it, but the best words I could put on it were, I don't want to wait 5 years. And what that translated into for me was to practice daily, consciously watching every time I got upset about anything and catching myself calling a timeout and saying some form of the following. I wonder how this is going to turn into a blessing. I wonder how this is going to work out for the best. I wonder how this is saving me from something worse. I wonder how this holds a lesson that I really need to learn. And that practice has done two phenomenal things in my life. The first one is it's resulted in me spending much, much less time in anger and frustration over things that happen the way I did not plan them to happen. And the second thing is it's allowed me to slow down and see miracles, connections, consequences, divine intervention, however you want to call it, whatever you want to call it, that I never noticed before. And it's dramatically improved the quality of my life. Just that one practice of catching myself every time I spill coffee, every time the car doesn't start, every time my partner is late when she was supposed to be on time, every time one of my kids doesn't do what they promised they would do. And the end result is I get to spend a lot more time in gratitude and appreciation and a lot less time in anger and fear and frustration. And I start to see connections, and you can call them coincidences or consequences, but blessings and little miracles all over the place, probably because I'm not clenching my teeth and fists in anger, and because I'm just more relaxed in an open questioning of, well, I wonder how this is going to work out.
Right.
And you know what?
Well,
it always does.
It is amazing, isn't it? When you bring the true human life forward and apply it to any circumstance. And one of the things I acknowledge David for, with what's happening right now with his family, was in, of course, a great deal of turmoil and pain when he heard this.
Michael?
Yes.
Michael, you're
sir.
breaking up a bit there. You need to, I want to hear what you have to say.
Okay, is that any better?
Well, that last sentence was yes.
Okay, good. Let's see if that stays stable. We've got a little bit of a weak signal here. Anyway, one of the things I really want to acknowledge David for with what's happening in his family right now and the loss of his son is that his commitment. You know, I mean, we did a lot of processing yesterday before he left. Just, you know, a great deal of grief and turmoil. And it's the second son that he's lost in 2 years. It was 2 years ago, last week, that another son passed away, young man. And so the commitment that David has gone to Louisville with is to hold the space for all the pain, the turmoil, the trauma in himself and in his family system, and to look at the dynamics of the family and invite the healing of everybody in the family, that everyone steps into healing the trauma, the pain, the anger, the anguish that they feel. And so even out of this, tragedy will come a blessing for the family and for David in his holding that space and bringing healing to the whole family. I was with him as he spoke to several brothers and sisters, and the shock and the dismay and the pain was just so evident, obviously, and it's a difficult thing to even speak of. And the next level of being says, okay, well, then we'll create healing from this. We'll bring this forward into a space of love and learn to be, and even in the face of the tragedy, that we learn together as a family to be the original, the beings we were created to be. And, of course, we define in this work the human life as the active presence of love. And so when you recognize that many of us have given up our true human lives to our pain, this becomes the opportunity to bring a new light into the world and into the family system. So I really acknowledge David for, in the middle of all of this, to be able to have that conversation. And we certainly hold the space and hold you, David, and your whole family in as powerful a space of love and blessing as we can, that everything that there is to come up in you that's painful, to let loose of it, and that you are that actual human life in the presence of all this family pain and can support and bring healing there to yourself and to everyone. So certainly here for you 1,000% in that.
Well, and I just want to say that in my experience of 37 years of doing therapy and my exposure to this work over the past 7 years or so, that David exemplifies fighting through resistance and personal difficulties and difficulty with commitment, and he has really made a stand and a demonstration of his life in the past few years.
For sure.
For being an example of defining commitment, making sure that you know the importance of it to you and your relationships, and then following through on it. So I honor him for that, and also will be holding the space of love and sending prayers and blessings to David and his entire family for this.
Are you still with us, David? Do you have anything to share?
He's not out on the switchboard now.
Okay. All righty.
We do have a comment and question from the chat room, though.
Awesome. Let's hear it.
There's a person who is asking about forgiveness as it relates to addictive behavior. I believe when addicts or alcoholics are in a clear mind, they're truly remorseful for their behavior when under the influence, but many go back to the addiction and behave badly again. It's difficult to figure out the proper role of forgiveness in this scenario.
Okay, well, that's a great question, and the whole idea here, remember, of forgiveness is not about letting other people off the hook because you're in pain or turmoil. You know, if the alcoholic does an aberrant, some kind of crazy behavior and does damage to you, holding them accountable is one thing. Their behavior is one thing. But what does that behavior bring up in me? Does that behavior bring up something in me that takes me out of my human life? Do I go into anger, fear, sadness, grief, or pain? And, you know, we do a whole workshop on codependence to interdependence. And codependence work is linked to addictive work, addictive healing, because if one doesn't have a way to deal with their internalized pain, the tendency will be to blame it on some external circumstance or situation, some external thing, instead of recognizing this is something that's going on inside of me. So when I say to the alcoholic who did this terrible behavior, you made me sad, afraid, angry, grieve, whatever, I'm in codependence. I'm putting my internal reality into my brain's image of them and wanting them to be responsible for what's going on inside of me. And the truth is, they're not responsible for what's going on inside of me. They're responsible for the behavior they've done. But real forgiveness here has to do with, okay, if I'm in rage, if I'm in fear, if I'm in pain over what they did, I'm really not in fear, rage, or pain over what they did. I'm in fear, rage, or pain because there's fear, rage, or pain in me. How does forgiveness relate to this? Forgiveness has nothing to do with letting the alcoholic or yourself off the hook for what's been done or what's happening inside of you. Forgiveness is the tool that you apply to what's happening inside of you to change what's happening inside of you. So when I go inside myself and I remove what never belonged, I am then forgiving. Nobody told us that forgiveness was about removing content from this body-mind unit, but that's exactly what it is. It has nothing to do with what the world teaches. We've been sold a bill of goods, a Trojan horse. You did something terrible, caused all this pain inside of me, but I'll forgive you. Doesn't change the pain inside of me. So how does forgiveness apply in that addictive situation? When you apply forgiveness inside yourself, and the behavior of the alcoholic has brought great sadness or grief or rage or whatever it is up in you, then you'll start seeing that this is the opportunity for you to remove the sadness, the grief, or the rage. That doesn't mean condoning the behavior they did. It just means that that behavior brought something forward in me that's not healthy for me. And so I apply forgiveness to that in order to remove it. In terms of forgiveness as far as the alcoholic goes, what I would offer is you want to offer or hand, in the moment when the alcoholic who's done that behavior is in remorse, that's the time to invite them to recognize, well, you're doing that behavior because that behavior's in you, and you can be in remorse and say, I'll never do it again. But if you don't ever forgive, remove that behavior, the next time the stress is up and the chips are down and you've had your fifth of scotch, you're going to tend to do that behavior again. We all do behaviors because those behaviors are in us. When you recognize you do a behavior because the behavior's in you, having remorse for having done it and saying, I'm sorry, I'll never do it again, doesn't change anything inside of me. But if I'll take the tool of forgiveness, and if you're not familiar with that tool, please go to the website, www.whyagain.com. On the right-hand side, there's a link that says Download Worksheets. Download the first 4 links. That will explain how to go inside yourself and remove what never belonged. Forgiveness is about removing what never belonged. And what you'll find is, as you remove what never belonged, oftentimes the very people who are the ones who are expert at bringing that up in you all of a sudden change their behavior. They all of a sudden become different because their behavior is, in many cases, resonated into activity by what you're holding resistance against. Remember, Yeshua said, resist not evil. When I'm in resistance against something, I'm literally setting up a very strong energy field that will tend to bring that which is resisted about in my life again and again and again. So the act of forgiving for the alcoholic is I go inside myself. I don't just stand around in remorse and tell everybody how sad and sorry I am I did this behavior. I go inside myself and I remove the behavior. That's what the forgiveness process in Aramaic, that's what the reality management process is about. It's how to do that. Does that make sense to the person who asked that question? Any other thoughts from them? And are you certainly welcome to call in?
She said, thank you. That's a very clear explanation. It's important not to confuse forgiveness with condoning.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's got nothing to do with approving of, condoning, or refusing to hold people accountable.
Are you there, Michael?
Let me go tell him that he just disappeared.
Well, the person in the chat room says that makes a lot of sense, even though it's a very radical concept for most of us who've been conditioned to think that other people control our emotions and our feelings. But it's easily demonstratable. We can literally do an exercise where we close our eyes and focus on different emotions and let ourselves feel them, from sadness to fear to anger to hurt, and then go to the feeling of joy and aliveness and breathe and relax and come out of that exercise and literally have demonstrated to ourselves that we just went through experiencing that whole wide range of emotions, sitting comfortably in a chair with no one around threatening us, no one around making us angry, no one around hurting our feelings, but we can literally elicit those emotions from within ourselves. And the way we do that is we think specific thoughts that generate those emotions. And that's all that's ever happening, even when someone is standing in front of me doing something that I determine is making me angry. All that's really happening there is I have a series of thoughts about the behavior I'm seeing or hearing, and those thoughts create the emotions that I then experience. And if you don't believe it, give it a try. What we ask for here is not belief. We ask for observation. We ask for testing it out in your own life. This is a series of tools that are literally designed to help create an improved quality of life for anyone who chooses to pick them up and use them. And that improved quality of life means more joy, more aliveness, more creativity, and less anger, fear, sadness, frustration, and all of the negative emotions. And if you want to get a handle on those tools, you can go to www.whyagain.com. And on the right-hand side, there's a link that says Download Worksheets. When you click on that link, on that page, the first 3 or 4 links give you everything you need to get started doing the worksheets. The Chapter 24 from Michael's book, which explains the process of filling out the worksheet and how it's important. The actual worksheet itself is available for free download. And then a 1-hour audio of a fabulous session that I believe was August 2nd of a woman who called in and worked through a worksheet with Michael and demonstrated fabulous willingness to look at her issues and to remove the things within her that were generating anger and hurt and sadness from a problem that happened over 20 years prior. So we encourage people to download the worksheet and put the pen to the paper and see the difference it can make in your life. Put the pedal to the metal. Can you guys hear me yet? I can hear that.
And the person in the chat room says, "Thank you, Michael. I've learned through the years that I am responsible for my own feelings, but will admit that I was confusing forgiveness with condoning." And we do have another caller when you're ready.
Yeah, and we live in a culture that totally and completely promotes the idea of pardoning in place of forgiveness. Let them off the hook. So not only is condoning a huge error or has nothing to do with one who takes responsibility and does forgiveness work, but it is not an act of pardoning another for what they've done. You may choose to pardon another for what they've done. That's a nice thing to do, and that certainly has benefits. But it's only forgiveness that will take you inside and clean out what never belonged in you in the first place. So that's the crux of the process that we're looking to support you in learning it. And, of course, as we support you in learning it, we get to learn it ourselves. So you've got another caller, sweetie?
We do. Area code 607, you're on the air. Who do we have and where are you calling from?
It's Richard from Ithaca. How is everybody?
Hi, Richard.
Hey, young man, we're doing well. How are you?
Oh, not bad. Just want to say I'm sorry to hear about the loss. And I want to
You're kicking in and out, Richard. Is Richard clear for everybody else?
No, he's breaking up.
Yeah, I
can't understand what you're saying, Richard.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
There you go. We got you now.
Okay, so, I was just commenting on how the moment I heard about the loss, the gut reaction I had, the knot in my stomach, and recognizing that it was, fear or grief and sadness, and just feeling it and allowing the tears to come up for myself certainly cleared it out for me. And I just have it's interesting that yesterday at our meditation group we ended up talking about grieving and glosses and stuff like that. And I learned a long time ago through when I lost my mother and I had to grieve my mother, I certainly learned that one way to deal with grief is to take time every day, set aside a time every day where you can spend taking the time to get in touch with those feelings and let those emotions come up, let the sadness come up, let the grief come up. And there's a huge well there probably for David right now, that it's not going to just happen in one day. He's going to have to do it days on end to let that well of grief come up and be gone and shed it. And it's like an ocean.
He's definitely working in that direction.
Okay, I understand. And I also have a story to tell that on my 50th birthday, I was planning a huge birthday party for myself. And it turns out I found out the day of my party, I got a phone call about my cousin who had been tragically killed in a car accident. And he had been close to me when growing up, and so I was caught in torn between wanting to be happy and enjoying my birthday party, and also the sadness and grief of finding out about my cousin who had passed away so tragically. And it was interesting because I had to choose that day. I had to say, okay, I'm going to choose to be choose to be happy today for my birthday party. And the next day I chose to be sad and let the grief come up from my cousin. And so the point I'm trying to make is we have the power to choose what we feel as well. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, and of course, recognizing that feelings come from thoughts. When you see something that pulls you into some form of hostility or fear, then the removal of that hostility or fear allows you to see in a whole different light. It's really the thoughts that we're choosing when we say, I choose what I feel. I'm choosing to intensify a certain thought. And our culture has taught us to intensify thoughts that really aren't useful. And so one of the goals of this work is to recognize what is not useful and to open a different space. And as you open a different space, then you can create differently than from, thoughts from the past of pain and trauma and fear. And so before David left yesterday, we spent several hours breathing and just doing work around pain. Say again?
You were cutting out. I couldn't hear you as well.
Oh, okay.
I was hearing you, Michael, so I think it's Richard's phone.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're cutting. Your signal must be a little on the weak side, Richard. But
okay. Well, anyway,
so,
that's all I wanted. That's all I wanted to comment on, and give my regards to David and wish him well. And
we will, Richard.
Okay. Take care.
I appreciate your call. Blessings. Thank you.
Bye.
Jeanie, do we have anybody else in the chat room that has a thought for us, or any callers?
No, I told the person who was asking the previous question to give the worksheets a try and let us know what they thought. And they said they would. That the big aha, though, for them today was that pardoning and condoning was not forgiveness, and that forgiveness was accepting responsibility for their part, not taking responsibility for the other person's part.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so we're down to about 5 minutes.
Somebody want to put your hand up in the chat room and ask us a question that'll give us 5 minutes of time? Otherwise, I had a thought of sharing something we're getting ready to go into in the intuitive development workshop, and that is that the universe, that being as huge as it is, that our intellect gives us valid information, useful in a certain context, but oftentimes that information isn't useful in the truth of things, in the larger context. And let me share, we're talking about this idea of death. There was a woman in Florida. I had a private practice down there 25 or so years ago, and her parents were in their 90s. Her father was extremely ill and obviously getting ready to pass, but the word death was not allowed in their family system. And interestingly enough, this woman is now in her 90s. I've worked with 3 generations of her family, and actually 4 generations. She's in her 90s, and she's kind of, on the verge of deciding whether to come or go. And so I got to work with her a little bit and with her daughter and granddaughter around mother. But this goes back about 25 years ago. This one was in her 60s, and the word death, as I say, was not allowed in the family system. She did a lot of work around building up the courage to be able to speak about her father's imminent passing. Went into her family home and opened that conversation. And there was a barrage of hostility and rage and, how dare you bring that topic into our home kind of thing. And she just held the space and processed through it. And one of the most memorable things about her sharing this with me in her next session was, this woman was, at the time, if I remember correctly, 64. And out of that conversation, after she held the space and got, was able to get the rage and the fear and all that moved through, the first time in her life she heard her father say the words, "I love you." He's in his 90s, getting ready to pass. She's 64. Now, what an awesome gift to be able to receive. And being willing to address something that is usually thought of as something terrible and horrible in our culture. She worked through that, and as a result, when her father passed, she and her 2 children and her mother were in a chain around his bed, holding hands with him. She said it was one of the most powerful and one of the most beautiful experiences of their lives together as a family. And she said that she had a clearer, more loving relationship with her father after he passed than when he was still in his body. I forget which one of the ancient philosophers said there's more under heaven and earth than we've been told. Perhaps there's a bigger picture here. Perhaps, when the ship sails out of our sight and we say, oh, it's gone, it's been lost, somebody a little further up in the harbor looks and says, oh, look, here comes a ship. The child in utero with its twin is born, but to the child that's left behind in the womb, it's a loss, it's a death. maybe if we can start to get over our feelings and our thoughts about loss, we can transform and recreate this whole process. If you go back to the ancient Aramaic, which is a physics language they shared with us, and they told us that with man, death began. We made the process of death up. Maybe we can stop buying into it. Maybe we can shift this whole game. And if we do, who knows what comes next? They also said the man of mind is not yet conceived of what lies in store. If we're stuck in holding on to what we've got and we refuse to let go, if we have some hostility or fear, pain, trauma, or behavior that we think will get us what we want, and we're not willing to give it up, and if it's based on hostility or fear, it is not ever going to get us what we want. If we're not willing to give it up, then we're not able to receive what's possible. This work is about receiving what's possible. And what's possible is a life without hostility or fear. We support you in creating the best year yet of your eternal life. Blessings. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Mind Shifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife, Jeanie, who present that internal Aramaic process of forgiveness. Michael and Jeanie are here every Monday through Friday from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Earth Angels Radio. For more on Michael and Jeanie, please visit www.whyagain.com. That's www.whyagain.com.